Hello, everyone. Thank you. Wow. Good evening. Thank you for being here in such great numbers. Your turnout exceeds our expectations, and there's more people coming in along the night. Special welcome for our guests and our panelists who will be there for Platform BK, with whom we organize this event. Our own artistic director, who will be drawing all night everything she sees. My name is Jacobin. I'm editor-in-chief of Jacobin in the Netherlands, and I was approached by Platform BK to organize this event, and so far it has been a very pleasant experience. Tonight we gather because of one of the most pressing issues of our time: militarization, further militarization, because Europe ranks among the most militarized regions in the world already, second only to the US, and yet it has been decided that it is not enough. As we exchange investments in US arms systems, as exchange money for lower tariffs, we have to cut on our own social security, on culture, on pensions, healthcare, and other hard-won rights. Many in the Netherlands, also cultural workers, still buy the claim that we need more militarization, that we need more weapons and we need more arms. And this evening will begin with a great speech by Wendela de Vries from Stop Wapenhandel to make a rock-solid case why that is not necessary. Because over the past decades, European establishments refused to invest big time in the energy transition and instead opted to buy cheap gas from their good friend Vladimir Putin, allowing him to renew his army and enabling him to invade Ukraine. Evidently, the world has become a less secure place. It's raining missiles in a growing number of places, from Ukraine to Iran, in the Middle East, especially in Palestine and Lebanon, but also as the world powers scramble for resources, they sow conflict, war, death, famine, destruction, and misery in places like Sudan, in Congo, in West Papua, to name but few. Now, those very same establishments that have been buying cheap gas claim that they are best able to protect ourselves from those aggressors. And I have my doubts about them. Although Western Europe already spends twice as much on arms as Russia, down from 5 times as much several years ago, it wants more. As Wendela aptly put it on our website today, the European security policy can be characterized with only 2 words: man and iron. European leaders seem to have no other fantasy, no other imagination than to arm themselves to the teeth and continue their saber rattling. They live in a world in which there is only a logic of discipline or being disciplined, sanction or being sanctioned, bombing or being bombed. However, they don't have a very popular worldview, and to sell their worldview, they need other people to help them. And that is where you come in. You cultural workers and you artists, they need them for their legitimacy. They need them to sell their worldview and to project that onto people. And I can assure you that if you continue to aid them in singing their song, that you will have a very comfortable life for the time being. However, starting a war, conducting a genocide in Palestine and other places is not very popular with the vast masses of people around the world. So in order to secure support and legitimacy, they do weird things. They walk, or maybe not so weird things. They walk along in red line demonstrations. They claim that Donald Trump is a security threat to world security. But that is only in election time. Afterwards, things change. If we would have an effective opposition, then of course that would be exposed. But if effective opposition is lacking, then that is where we come in, as Jacobin. We try to expose the lies in election time and hold our leaders accountable and tell the truth story and the hypocrisy that we see every day with our own prime minister, not to speak of our own NATO chief. But we can't do that alone. And that is where you come in again, or maybe where we all come in. We need artists, we need cultural workers, we need an aesthetic, we need a language, and we need those beautiful banners you see around us to expose and to make clear that their project of buying arms, of militarizing, further militarizing Europe, is not our project. And that is the only way we can find a different path. Tonight, we have a long program, but it's also an interactive program. First, we have 2 keynote speeches by first Wendela from Stop Wapenhandel, and then afterwards Alina will take the stage because it was her article that first gave impetus to organizing this evening. And you can read it in English on Platform BK and in Dutch on Jacobin.nl. After that, we have a brief Q&A, and then Hilda will take over and invite 4 artists, protest activists on stage and further discuss the topics that have been raised. Yet usually these evenings generate a lot of energy, and to channel that energy not only to outside but also to keep and gather a little bit. Afterward, we will split up the room in small groups, and we will have a brief conversation, an intimate and more focused conversation about everything that is there, to see whether that can give further impetus to take that energy, for instance, to the arms fair coming up soon. My grand aunt was the first female colonel in the Dutch Air Force. And despite working for the Dutch army and being a devoted Christian, she also was a staunch defender of Palestine, not a family gathering past without raising that topic. She was also often featured in newspapers, or infrequently, but sometimes, and then she was often quoted for stating that matters of war and peace are too important to only leave to men. So I'm very happy that the biggest share of all the people tonight are non-men on stage. I think I have said enough. Aside from that, organizing this event and also doing our work at Jacobin is all voluntarily, so please subscribe. You can immediately get the magazine because it's quite heavy to take them all back alone, so please do that. And yeah, one more thing. Let's free Palestine forever. Thank you.
Well, it's hard starting after such an introduction. Thank you for organizing this event, which is very Very welcome by us. I am Wendela de Vries. I'm from Stop Wapenhandel. We are a small research and action group. I will talk into the microphone. We are a small research and action group. We research the arms trade, the arms industry, the arms lobby. Who is profiting from the arms trade? Who is the victim of the arms trade? How arms are used? How corruption works? Well, everything. So we do very boring stuff. Not like you who do very creative stuff. We do very boring stuff. We try to give facts and figures to activists, journalists who want to work with this issue. And just during the dinner we had before here, I spoke with somebody. He said, "Do you think this is interesting? How are you motivated?" And I said, "Well, it's more easy to do when there's no war going on, because then you can see it as something technical, something financial. You can speak about, you can more easily speak about death rates and deadly power of weapons when they are not actually used at the same day somewhere in the Middle East." We live in very dangerous and sad times. So what I will do tonight is, give a boring speech about definitions. The question to be answered this evening is how the Dutch state promotes militarization and how art workers can stand against this. But I think for a good debate, we need to establish first what is militarization and how is the Dutch state promoting militarization. Well, militarization is a process where military values and interests start to dominate the society and political decision-making, where the use of organized violence or the threat with organized violence is normalized. Military values glorify power and strength and legitimize dominance of strong states over weak states, where strong is defined as having the strongest, most technological, advanced, most deadly military force. It is the denial of equity of peoples. It is power over justice. It's also at the core of neocolonialism and a lot of the military values we can find back in patriotism. And the militarized mindset is crucial for military power. According to the Dutch Defense Doctrine 2025, the Defense Doctrine is the whole basic document on which the military thinking of the armed forces is based. According to this Defense Doctrine, the moral component, the will to fight, is one of the three core pillars of military capability. The other two being the physical component, so how many arms you have and how can you use them well. And the third component is the conceptual component, the organization and the plan how to fight war. But the moral component is one of the three core pillars, and its strengths depend on the legitimation and support for war at the home front and in society. So how important it is you can see in the present wars, for example, in the Ukraine at the moment. But the moral at the Ukraine side is very high. So they endure the fighting, although they are not winning. While at the Russian side, the moral is very low. It's just high enough for them not to lose. If this is a good thing, you can wonder, because the war will go on forever and ever this way. But the moral is a very important element in this war. You can also see the importance of moral in Gaza, where the Palestinian people do not give up, although the enemy has an overwhelming military overweight. But the moral is so high, they can't defeat the people. Moral is crucial. Militarization cannot work with the support of the society. It is not for nothing that people like Mark Rutte stress all the time that we should speak with one voice. There should be no dissenters. We should speak with one voice for militarization and for war. And the Commander-in-Chief of the Netherlands keeps stressing that the mindset of the people is very important. We must be one. We must prepare for war. Every one of us, every one of you, we must prepare for war. It's very important for them. Dissenting voices are ridiculed. Peace voices are ridiculed. With every objective seen... now I'm losing my line. I write it all down so that I don't lose my speech, and now I'm losing the place where I am on the paper. Give me a minute. I was saying the idea that nobody should dissent is, from every way you look at it, is stupid, because when everybody speaks with one voice, there is no good thinking done. We know this from social psychology. Decision-making theory. Dissent is always useful for a better understanding of the world. Let's have this dissent. But it does not fit with militarization. Militarization needs a uniform mindset. And there are two drivers for this militarization. The one is fear, and the other is the feeling of superiority. Moral superiority, Western superiority. For fear and superiority, one needs an opponent, an enemy, to feel superior to. And this enemy can be constructed, and that is what happens. The enemy is being constructed, and militarization divides the world in good and in bad. Black and white, simple concept. They, the adversary, they are the bad ones. And if they are bad, we must be the good ones. They are a threat, we are only defending ourselves. They are evil. We are honest. We have good intentions. It is a very attractive, simple concept, and people like to feel to belong with the good ones. So it feels very good with the population. And you can apply this concept of good and bad on nations, on religions, we the noble Christians against the bad Muslims, or on races, or on people. And militarization needs this division, and it needs to demonize the other. Because also normal people don't want to kill other people. You must convince them that the other is bad, is not a good person, is not like you. That's the only way that you can people really get to fight. And it is quite easy to divide people, to organize one group of people against the other. It only needs bad, evil-minded leaders to do so, or maybe just leaders who want power and wealth and have a lot of advanced communication sources and channels at their disposal. So what happens in the Netherlands, what you see with the population, we are made afraid of an enemy, afraid of states, religions, the other. And then there is the strong, good soldier, the strong, good military coming to defend us. And this image is very much reinforced by popular culture and in games and in movies. The soldier is going to defend the vulnerable, the weak, the women and children. Women and children is one word, there's no daddies in here, there's women and children. And the whole complexity of conflict between societies, between nations, between different interests, is supposed to be solved with one simple solution: military violence. Who does not want a simple solution for all the bad things in the world? Who does not want to be the good person saving the world by one simple act, shooting the bad persons? And of course we know that is not the reality. But is actual the solution that is presented to us through militarization. And it is also the solution that is very much promoted at the moment by the Dutch state. That is, where do we see this promotion of the militarization by the Dutch state? Now, I see people looking at this image. I think it's a suggestion. We can try to do this, it's much nicer. Where do we see the Dutch state promote militarization? That is, in all the situations where the state favors military activities over civil activities. And the most clear and simple and well-known example maybe is that all 17-year-olds receive a letter about the military service. How welcome they are to join the military service, to join the armed forces. Because the military has a huge problem with unfulfilled vacancies. They can buy a lot of arms, but somebody has to use it to steer those arms and to maintain them, and people don't want to do it. So they badly need new personnel. But the same is true for education, and the same is true for healthcare. They also need new personnel. So why not invite 17-year-olds to start a career as a school teacher or as a nurse? Apparently, soldiers are more valued by the state than care workers or education workers, and that is militarization. It's a choice. Another example, also very obvious. Jacobin mentioned it already. We are giving enormous lot of money to the military. There's an enormous rise of military spending. This military spending more than tripled in 10 years, the last 10 years, from 8.7 billion euro in 2015 to 22 billion in 2025. And according to plan, this figure will continue to rise in 2026. And to make this acceptable to the population, we must put fear in the population. The government is quite aware of that, and fear for war is instrumentalized to make this military spending rise acceptable. And the common mindset at this moment in the Netherlands is that the Russians are at the brink of invading us. This is not based on facts, this is based on emotions, on the fear of war, that the war in Ukraine arises in many of us. And politicians and institutes like NATO are playing on this fear. In the article that Alina wrote for Jacobin, she gives the example of the mural competition during the NATO summit in The Hague last year. Artists were invited by, I think it was the state or the town council or maybe NATO. They were invited to make murals promoting, well, actually the freedom and peace protected by NATO. It was artistic propaganda, but there was more propaganda at that time and also more subtle propaganda. One of this was the Pussy Riot performance in Paard, the Hague music stage, on the first night of the NATO summit. Well, Pussy Riot is considered cool. I think I like them. Yeah. And they stand up against Putin. I like that too. But booking them at the start of a NATO summit is a way to create a kind of subconscious connection between the cool protest against a repressive regime and the huge military apparatus, which is NATO. That has actually nothing to do with what happens inside Russia. It's not helping the Russian people. It's not supporting the Russian opposition. But the subconscious connection is made. Russia, repression, NATO, cool. It's a mix of emotions on which we as humans respond. And that's what happens. Our emotions are played with. But the fear of a Russian invasion is not based on facts. When you look at the facts, it's very unlikely that the Russians will invade. Again, Jouk said it already, the collective military spending of only the European NATO countries is actually more than 3 times as high as the military spending of Russia. And the Russian economy is very small. It's no bigger than the Italian economy. It's no chance that this small economy can endure a long and big war with a big enemy. And the Russian morale, I said it already, Russian morale is low. They don't want to go to fight. So the likeliness that Russia will invade Europe is very small, and politicians know that, and military people know that. If there is any threat from Russia, it's in cyber warfare and disinformation. That is a serious threat. But against that, you don't need tanks, you don't need fighter jets, you don't need warships, but that is where the money is going. That is what we are buying as the Netherlands. And the Dutch population is so afraid of Russia that we accept huge budget cuts in healthcare and education, in NATO protection, a total spending cut of 19 billion euro to pay the arms industry and the militarization, and it is hardly questioned. I've seen a lot of discussion in the papers the last weeks about this budget cuts, but hardly anybody is connecting it with the military spending that is going up. And we see this happening all over Europe. European military budgets are going up everywhere. That is militarization. According to PricewaterhouseCoopers, my favorite institute, from 2025 to 2030, an accumulated total of 178 billion euro will be spent on the military in the Netherlands alone. And more than half of this will go to the military industry. This is public money going to private companies. Not all to Dutch companies, also a lot to companies abroad, mainly the United States military industry, and about 41 billion euro will stay in the Netherlands to be invested in the Dutch military sector. Still an attractive figure, 41 billion euro. But to absorb all this money, the industry also has to be militarized. The military sector has to expand in the Netherlands. Civil companies are invited by Dutch state agencies, such as the Dutch Enterprise Agency, the Rijksdienst voor Ondernemend Nederland, or to the government-initiated NIDV lobby organization for the Dutch military industry that also organizes the Nets Fair. They are invited with all kinds of support mechanisms, with fundings, with programs, to turn their civilian products into something that is applicable to weapons, to a military project. And of course this company joins, but this is where the money is. They could also be invited to make a more sustainable product for the green transition, or products that are beautiful and enjoyable for culture, but the choice of the Dutch government is to invest in military production. This is militarization. And part of this money will also go to universities. We see a militarization of the education system. Most money goes to technical universities, but also to the humanities. For example, to develop artificial intelligence. There's a lot of development there connected to the military industry. If you want to do interesting research and you want to have a good budget, the state will support you when you start working for the military. There's more military presence also in other sectors, like the healthcare and hospitals that are being prepared to scale down civil healthcare in case of war. At the same time, pandemic preparedness is scaled down. The money is not going there. The choice is made to fund the war preparations instead of the general health care. And I find it unbelievable that we all accept it. How is it possible? How is it possible that just a small group of people is critical on this and is trying to raise the debate and protest and make banners? How is it possible that Dutch people accept what is happening? Well, I think it's because the stories that we hear appeal to our emotions and not to our brain. And we are bombarded with biased information. We see military officers in uniform on television explaining the world as if they are objective analysts. Of course they are not. They're very biased. When they speak about conflict, they see it only through the lens of their sector, the military sector, the sector that is organizing state violence. But they are invited by the media as experts on war and peace. Well, they might be experts on war, but they're absolutely not experts on peace. And of course, they promote their own line of work as the solution to any problem. And they come with simple solution that fits into the sound bites of the media programs in the simple formats. And when a journalist asks a more critical question, the next time this expert does not come. And that is the end of the career of the journalist. This is militarization of the flow of information. It's not only the artists that have a problem with speaking out. The same is true for the journalists and also for the academics. When they ask the wrong question, the questions that do not fit in the military narrative, they place themselves in a vulnerable position because the money is with the military. Universities and other educational facilities do not want to lose this money. And it is the precarious economic position of many journalists, of artists and academics that make them that works in favor of the militarization, of general consent to the general opinion. One specific element of the militarization by the Dutch state that stands out at the moment I want to mention is the Wet op de Defensiegereedheid, the Law on Defense Preparedness, because it's a textbook example of militarization of society. It is again a Europe-wide phenomenon. It is also pushed by the European Commission. We see it also in other countries. It's a kind of container law, and what it does, it gives the Ministry of Defense the power to put a lot of civil rights, privacy rights, environmental rights out of order. Laws to protect fauna and flora, for example, and the right of citizens to be informed and make objections to extension of military installations. It also gives new power to the armed forces to collect information on individuals, on peace activists, on activist artists, and to share this information with foreign powers. It is a very dangerous law. And at present it is with the Raad van State, the juridical advisory board of the government, and when they have given the advice it will go to the parliament. And seeing the people who are in the parliament, I'm afraid it will not be stopped. But we're going to try it. Well, now one last thing. I see you looking at your watch, or okay. One last thing, I can say one last thing, okay? Militarization includes a definition of security and threat that is very limited. It defines security and threat only in terms of war. You see security studies, you see security institutions, and it's only about war. We are on the threat of an external military power, an enemy, and we meet to deter this foreign nation that stands around us ready to attack us. And that is the most important thing in the world, and all the money and all the effort should go to there. Well, when you ask a normal person in Amsterdam, what do you fear? This person might say, I fear that I won't have a house. I fear that nobody will care for me when I'm old, or that I will not be a midwife when I have to give birth. Or people will say, I'm afraid of the climate crisis. I fear this threat to all life on Earth. Or they will say, I fear that our leaders are leading us to war. Nobody is stopping this ridiculous militarization. Nobody is stopping Trump going to war. Nobody is stopping the development of artificial intelligence in weapons, robot weapons, self-thinking weapons. Weapons will define when to shoot and who to shoot. These are weapons under development. The military definition of threat is actually speaking of itself. Militarization is the threat. Undermining the democratic rights, an important word, I should say that right. That's the threat, and the climate collapse, of course, is the big threat. The biggest threat is our leaders not stopping the war machine, and that is what we need to fear. Not external threats, not hostile nations, not other religions, not other people, responsible leaders with no guts to stop the terrible war machine. And I'm very much looking forward to the panel to hear what artists can do to help us. Thank you.
So no pressure. Absolutely not. I'm going to make a bit more space for myself. I'm also going to read a little bit of a speech. So my name is Alina. I'm the reason why you're all here today, I think. I'm sorry. Joke. No, I'm not the reason why you're all here. The reason why you're all here is because you all care about this topic, and I know many of you already are working on it. And I'm very much grateful to know you and to know your efforts. I wanted to, before I read a little speech that I prepared, I wanted to also thank virtually the contributors to what's around us. Basically, some of the banners are sourced from groups in Rotterdam, such as Geef Tegen Haat, or Cultural Workers Unite, or Veto Oorlog. There's also some beautiful posters that are kind of like hidden in the plants, and you can also find outside, which are printed at kiosk, and they're also from Geef Tegen Haat. There's what else? Yeah, so there's also some posters on the wall that come from Workers for Palestine, and you might have found on your chairs some flyers that look like this. If not everyone found one, then maybe you can look to your friends or to your people next to you. There's going to be a fundraiser tomorrow, right? Right, tomorrow in the Juanita from 8. So feel free to join and support, also because important work is being done if you contribute. None of the work that the culture workers are doing in general can be done without your support. And on the sides, on the side panels, actually, I just got a copy of the book also. So on the side panels, there's visuals from a publication that will be launched. I'm opening it in real time. Publication that will be launched on the 19th. Let me check. Where? Sorry, I am prepared, I promise. I even took a screenshot before I started. Come on, bear with me, please. Yes. No, too many links. God damn it. All right. Yeah. Wait. So the publication is from Valise, and I'm going to show it. It's called In the Absence of Bombs, Art, War and Silence, and it's edited by Pascal Guillain and Bahia Shebab. And all the visuals are from it, all the visuals on the sides. Right, go to the launch as well on the 19th at the Universiteitstheater Nieuwe Doelenstraat here in Amsterdam. All right, now that I did promo, I'm also going to read. All right, and let's see if this works. Yeah, so, and the visuals that I have behind me are gracefully provided to me by Workers for Palestine, and they're from like a larger archive, also from local, but also like historical references to anti-militarization. And there's a, I hope at the end, but if not, I'll point to it. There's a little, how do you call it? There's a schema made in relation particularly to the art fair that's going to happen in Rotterdam at the end of this month. So yeah, let's see how good I am at reading. So, good evening again. It's really nice to see you all, or as best as I can see you all. I was curious before I fully start to ask you, and to kind of like ask you to raise your hands, how many of you are cultural workers, or in general affiliated with the cultural field? Unfortunately, well, I mean, sure. That's a choice, I think. Thank you. It's a lot of you, and I mean, the reason why I ask you to raise your hands is because I'm also very much encouraged by that, being a cultural worker myself. Basically, I know we share a lot of things in common, and I know also that I met a lot of you in the same context of like protesting, not just against militarization, but also for Palestine and against, I would say, climate collapse. So it's good that we share all these things in common. We share a lot of things that the cultural field has to go through, including protesting. I'm here basically because I wrote this damn article that was mentioned at the beginning, which is called Up in Arms, just like the event tonight. So Up in Arms, how the Dutch state promotes militarization and how art workers can stand against it. I would say it's a bit of a hopeful title, if I can say so, because of course art workers are trying their best to stand against militarization, but it's still a process, and we're still a bit, I would say, nervous and shy and trying to like flex our muscles gradually. I spent quite some time researching for this article, although I should have put more examples in it, but nevertheless. But I started writing it because I have a question that was slowly bothering me after quite some time. And the question had to do with basically what happens when the cultural sector becomes quietly entangled with the military sector and ends up doing NATO propaganda. I don't think it's something that is obvious for everyone. So it might sound a little bit abstract at first. I mean, it's not as if like we see tanks rolling into museums, although I mean, I don't know if anyone remembers, but at a certain point in time, the Bali exhibited a tank on Leidseplein, which was a Russian tank that was destroyed during the Battle of Kiev, as a symbol of fragility of the resilience of European democracy. I quote. Yeah, correct. The Bali is funded by NATO, but it's not just that. I tried to do a little bit of a version of this lecture at another festival a couple of weeks ago, and I also discovered that on the board of the Bali, there's also one person that's the chair of the government's Advisory Council for Science, Technology and Innovation, aka close link to militarization. Well, I mean, it's also not as if we are currently praising war criminals within the cultural field. Although, if one is to be, I would say, as overly online as I am, you might remember that the director of a funding organization, Drom en Daad, at a certain point, posted on his Instagram the fact that Antony Blinken came to Rotterdam, very congratulatory. After a little bit of online bullying, he ended up deleting his post. So, unless you have my tendency to be overly online, you might not remember that. But things kind of like trickle, you know, like, as was mentioned, it's something that trickles into one's consciousness without fully like being digested. It's also not as if we're pretending that art is politically neutral while fascism is on the rise. And I don't know if anyone is like keeping an eye on the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, but ever since they were asked to condemn the genocide in Palestine, they've been incredibly quiet, which means neutral, which means, I mean, neutrality in the case of rising fascism is complicity. But it's also very much in line with what Dutch government policy is at the time. So if in the case of Ukraine, it was directly told to the museum to make a statement, and the museum complied, as many also art educational institutions complied. Now in the case of Palestine, the silence is deafening, or rather the neutrality is deafening. So there are subtle connections to militarization, but there are also very, very obvious connections. And those connections happen through infrastructures, through funding systems, through venues, and through partnerships, and through broader political priorities, which shape the environment in which culture exists. And once you start looking at those structures closely, you begin to kind of notice. You notice that the cultural sector in the Netherlands has spent years navigating cuts and precarity and shrinking resources. And the Dutch state has been, in the meantime, dramatically increasing investments in defense, as per what Wendela was mentioning. To give a rough sense of the scale, the Netherlands was projected to spend, I think you mentioned 22 billion in defense in 2025. I had 25 billion, but nevertheless, the moment things go into the territory of billions, my brain shuts down, because the cultural field for sure does not get that much. So at the same time, the cultural budgets face cuts of hundreds of millions, not billions, but millions, out of not that much to begin with. And there's like a little bit of lagging in terms of inflation, correction, and dwindling investment in the cultural field. So nominal cultural spending grew by roughly 34.7% between 2015 and 2023, but inflation grew with approximately 26%. This means actually there has been a decrease in institutional individual purchasing power, and private contributions also have dropped from around 100 million before COVID to around 60 million in 2022. So you have, well, I mean, things are not really keeping in line within the cultural field. We're not actually getting that much funding. Let's say we didn't really get cuts, but things are also not keeping track of what is needed. And I would say that it's really hard to compare the budget for culture and the budget for defense because of this like disparity in scale. And the two serve very different functions in society. In my mind, one of them has the aim of uplifting and the other one has the aim of destroying. But that's a personal take, let's say. Nevertheless, the budgets reveal priorities. So they show indeed what governments are willing to invest in and what they want to give attention to, resources to, and where they put their imagination and where they want our imagination to go. What we're seeing right now across Europe, I'm not just saying in the Netherlands, but in general across Europe, also in my country, so I'm Romanian still. I didn't become Dutch in the meantime, although I know way too much about this country. Is that there is a shift towards militarization. There's more and more support for not just the current war that's going on in Ukraine, but also for allying with NATO. And militarization, indeed, as Wendela mentioned, doesn't just happen through armies and weapons, but it happens culturally, it happens through narratives, through visibility, through normalization of certain industries in public life. So this is where the cultural sector comes into the picture. One of the examples that pushed me to write the article, and it's going to come up in the visuals that I'm showing, is a venue, which is Rotterdam Ahoy in Rotterdam. I think it's also, well, I mean, it's where the Arms Fair takes place. The Arms Fair takes place every year, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, around November? There we go, November. At the same time, Rotterdam Ahoy is a venue that hosts something else every other week, even more often than that. So one could say that there's like this one venue that hosts both the Arm Fair and next week or 2 weeks from now, from the 27th until the 29th, well, 2 weeks from now, also hosts the art fair. So one of the biggest, well, the biggest art fair in the Netherlands, which is Art Rotterdam. And from, I think this year onwards, also Unseen, which is the biggest photography fair in the Netherlands, are both hosted also in Rotterdam Ahoy. So yeah, the art fair is a very important event in the Dutch art calendar. It's particularly important for young emerging artists and galleries. And it's also the place where young starting artists, so I'm referring to visual artists and artists that are funded through the Mondrian Fund, where they just get the chance to exhibit for the first time on a really big stage. It's like a little bit of a society outing. They get a grant that is given to them for 1 year, and after this 1 year, it's an opportunity to be part of Art Rotterdam. The particular part that they're contributing to is called Prospects. It's like the young, cool, hip exhibition. Been there a while ago. I can tell you it's not all it's cracked up to be, but it doesn't look like that. It has its own glamour, its own ways of being looked at from the outside. So, as I mentioned, Rotterdam Ahoy hosts both the Arms Fair in November and also hosts the Art Fair in March. So the same building that hosts the two of them, but not at the same time, poses a bit of a dilemma. So I don't know if these connections are visible to people. So because of this difference in time scale, I don't know if the connection is immediately obvious. And also, what does it mean for a visual artist to show their work in the same venue? What does it mean to take a moral stance against something that you against something that you don't believe in? And who are you actually addressing is also a very good question. So, an opportunity. Consider the fact that funding is not that much in the Netherlands to begin with, and you don't have that many opportunities. So this is your one chance to pitch yourself on a very large scale. Basically, I don't know. We're going to have, as part of the panel, a representative from a collective that's trying to organize against this particular association between the arms fairs and the art fair. And they're going to talk a bit more about their experience in trying to organize and what it actually means to go through this dilemma as a visual artist. But moving on, the question is, the question that appears is quite difficult to ignore. So I would say also, it's not, okay, how do I put this? Many people, when they end up in this sort of situation, they don't really know if they should dedicate their entire practice to making work about the arms fair from now on. So I would say this is not really the dilemma that one should go at it with, but more if you feel like something is not sitting right with you, you should be able to speak out. But let's say within the case of Art Rotterdam, you are put in a quite submissive position to the institution that is organizing, and you can't really have a say. In general, what you're actually doing once you're doing this is normalizing. So if you consider, also if the organizers of this particular art fair consider that there's really no relation between your work being presented in March and the arms fair being presented in November, what you're doing is you're ignoring something that's happening and you're normalizing through your position in this particular fair instead of actually standing against it. But of course, this is what we call within the art field artwashing, but it doesn't hit so hard because it seems like it's distant from you. While you can have, of course, situations of oil companies that sponsor museums or tech corporations that fund cultural programs or luxury real estate developments that commission public art or people dabbling in flash funding that fund museums of contemporary art. And there it becomes really obvious. What you need to remember is that art carries symbolic value. So it can be instrumentalized, like your work, no matter what its content is, can be instrumentalized by an institution, and you should be able to have a say in that without fear. When art appears alongside the defense sector, which is also a funny way of putting it, something similar can happen. It's not necessarily because artists want for that to happen, but it happens structurally. So there's things that are very complicated for people that work in culture. On the one hand, we rely on these infrastructures of the cultural field in order to survive. We rely on grants and exhibitions and residencies and commissions. So these are things that make it possible to continue to produce our work. But on the other hand, the infrastructures are embedded in systems that raise certain ethical questions. So one of the arguments that I make in the article is that under these conditions, the idea of being neutral becomes increasingly fragile. a lot of us cultural workers would like to believe that we can simply focus on our work and stand outside of politics, and that art can exist within a protected bubble. But culture never really worked that way. I want to say that where we exhibit and where we fund our work and which institutions we collaborate with, all of these decisions are shaped by political and economic structures, and often these structures leave artists with very limited choices. Imagine you're a young emerging artist applying for a grant in the Netherlands to funds like the Mondrian Fund that I mentioned, which can be crucial for developing your practice. And then within the exhibition opportunities that you get for building your visibility and career, it also happens that you are connected to militarized infrastructures. So do you refuse the opportunity? Do you risk losing your income, visibility, and future support? Or do you accept it, even if in the broader context it makes you feel uncomfortable? For some of us, I mean, that's not really a choice. Some people can refuse. Some people don't really have a choice to refuse. But these dilemmas are not really simple about individual ethics. They're produced by structural conditions, which means that the responses need to be structural as well. Now, historically, artists have addressed these kind of tensions collectively. And this is the beautiful schema that I wanted to bring up. So I would say that we have initiated petitions, boycotts, public statements, and organized refusals. For example, and I didn't mention it in the visual, I think, but Wendela did mention it, there was a NATO youth mural competition in The Hague, which invited young artists to create public artworks celebrating international cooperation. But in reality, the project functioned as a form of cultural diplomacy using art to frame a military alliance in a positive way. The same military alliance which at the moment is pushing for war in Iran under the guidance of the former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. The same military alliance that has always pushed for war, historically speaking, under the guise of defense. In response at the time, artists and activists organized a counter-action for this NATO mural competition. They submitted anti-war designs and publicly challenged the project. This was under the banner of the Student Union of the Royal Academy of Art and of Cultural Workers Unite from Rotterdam. What's interesting about moments of like this one, of collective refusal, is the fact that it's not just one person refusing, it's a coalition. So there's a collective nature to refusal. When one artist refuses something alone, they might be flying under the radar or risking their own position, but when artists act together, something different happens. It's also something that I hope will happen as a result of us being here tonight. I would say the conversation expands and the responsibility is shared. And suddenly, we're no longer talking about an individual artist making a difficult career decision. We're talking about the broader political role of culture, which leads to a bigger question that sits underneath the entire article. What do we actually want culture to do in society? Or the visual arts in this case, but I would say culture. Is art merely here to decorate the present, to add symbolic value to institutions that already hold power? Or can art also function as a space of critique and change, a place where the systems that shape our world are examined, questioned, and challenged? Personally, I think one of the most valuable things art can offer is precisely that space for reflection and transformation. But maintaining that role requires a certain level of independence. And when cultural infrastructures become entangled with militarized economies, or try to talk about neutrality, that independence becomes harder to maintain. And when I say independence, I do not mean that the Mondrian Fund should stop funding artists. On the contrary. I don't mean the state should bail out on giving cultural support. I mean the state and the Mondrian Fund should be able to be held accountable by artists, which are ultimately also taxpayers. Maybe it's not the sexiest position to have, but I am by no means an isolationist. I don't want us to isolate ourselves from funding. I want institutions that are meant to support us to be held accountable instead. The goal of writing the original article was to make these entanglements visible and to show the dilemma behind what culture workers have to deal with. Because once we see that, we can ask better questions of the people that are funding us. also about what partnerships are being created behind the scenes, also about the responsibility that institutions have, and also about how we can support each other in navigating these dilemmas. So I hope this helps to create a conversation. I hope this scheme also helps to create a conversation, and I'm going to explain a little bit what it is, unless it's really, really obvious, although the text is a bit like blurry. Yeah, long story short, I hope we can manage to get a bit further in the conversation tonight. Sorry for the really long dragged on text. But yeah, so basically what this is what is currently happening at the arms fair, NEDS being the arms fair. All the companies that are still collaborating with the arms fair and showing at the arms fair. At a certain point, it was mentioned that, was it 1 or 2 Israeli companies that were no longer showing at the arms fair, which made it okay, apparently, to have an arms fair. And what you can see above is Art Rotterdam, also with the venues that are participating in public programming, and also with the Mondrian Fund and the state supporting. And if you notice, some of those venues are in pink, and that means some of those participated in a cultural boycott against Israel. So in a way, they both signed a boycott against these, well, to hopefully help aid the stopping of the genocide in Palestine, but at the same time, they're still displaying, exhibiting, not really asking questions about the venue that they're showing in. That's about it. Can I name them? You mean the institutions that are showing in Rotterdam? Definitely. Yeah, so there's the Prospects Fair, but that's not really an institution. There's Unseen, and the ones that are participating are the Rijksacademie, Kunstinstituut Melli, and the RIB in Rotterdam, so far, that we know of. Yeah, that's about it. So this is kind of like an open, this is like homework. We can talk about it. Thank you.
So there might already be some really pressing questions. Is this working? Great. They can also be for Wendela. So if you have one, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to maybe ask a question. I think we're kind of missing the question about militarization of which came first, the chicken or the egg. And we talk very often about the Dutch state or leaders not stopping the war instead of the opposite of them making war, because war is actually really profitable. Genocide makes a shit ton of money. And one thing that we don't question a lot is how we take away public money, so like from taxes, and where it's going to is actually arms companies, and arms companies are private. So those leaders are actually just funneling public fund into private fund, and it's going into the same pockets of the same oligarchs. So I'm just wondering at this point, why are we still framing it as if it's the job of the state to actually stop war?
We are socializing risk and privatizing gains. Once again, this time about war, I think I'm just gonna ask Wendela to briefly reflect, if you dare.
I think it's more a statement than a question. And I agree, of course, with you. So, yeah, I think you have to address it from many sides. And yeah, I'm trying to think what exactly is the question. Sorry. Actually, I do agree with you. It's a huge transfer of money from state to the private companies. There's also now a new tax coming underway, as you probably know, the freedom, what is it? Freedom contribution. That should be, I think, about 400, 500 euro per person per year to contribute to raise the military spending. Yes, it's. I mean, it's serious. You start laughing. I know it's ridiculous, but that is what is proposed by, I think, the Christian Democrats, and I think it's part of the. He knows everything. I think he's my souffleur. That's good that he's here, and we're looking at ways to sort of refuse it, something like that. To have an action like that, you can refuse it. That you can say we don't want it.
Let me perhaps, shall we just go to the, one more reflection?
No, I mean, maybe to add, indeed, that was not a question, that's a statement, but I also think maybe then what is the, I would say cultural workers maybe also think that some of that money will end up in their pockets, which is why they don't mind the fact that it goes from the state through the defense, through the, but then this is why I advocated a little bit more for the fact that the state should fund culture rather than what we see right now. The state is reducing its influence in funding culture and it's relying on private funders. So then at a certain point, the private funder could also be, I don't know, Thales or I have no idea what else, so good to reflect on that as well.
I think we can carry the statements to the panels. Can I invite you, Hilda, from Platform BK on stage to introduce everyone?
Thank you, everybody. Indeed, I was just sitting in the front, and indeed, it's a full room. So that's really fantastic that you're all here. I would like to invite our guests, Dewi Sofia from Balik Bayan. Yeah, she's the one. And there is Shruti Bala from Cultural Boycott Israel. There is Anika Schwarzloza, artist. Here, you're in the front. And there is Sarjan Azuz, artist and part of Collective Refusal. Okay, so we did start a little bit over time. So we have maybe a bit less time to do the panel talk, but let's see. We have until 10. Jauke mentioned that we're going to make a conversation in groups so that we're having, after the panel talk, to have more intimate and focused conversations and not feel intimidated to ask a question in a big group. But let's see. We can decide that as well together as the conversation as well goes and how the time is being spent. My name again, Hilda Msharrafiyi. I'm a co-director of platform Beeldende Kunst. That's Platform BK. And it's an art workers association that advocates for better art policy. Art workers being artists, designers, critics, independent curators. And it's artist-led, together with my co-director, Arthur Kneepkens, and it's member-based, meaning it's an association where art workers join in solidarity, supporting this association in order to advocate, push for a better art policy, and these are the kind of events we make. We have a website, platformbk.nl, platformbk.nl, and there we publish articles such as the one that Alina Lupu has written, Up in Arms, and both in Dutch and Netherlands, and fair, and do collaborations such as this one with Jacobin in order the articles that we, I said Dutch and Netherlands? Yeah. Dutch and Netherlands and Engels. Go. Thanks. And we made this partnership with Jacobin in order that the articles and the case studies that we publish also reach a wider audience, so that we're not just talking art workers among ourselves, but we also find solidarities with researchers, with Stop Wapenhandel, with journalists, and reach further. No pressure on Alina for doing that talk about mapping the entire or part of the scene that we find ourselves in, and this entanglement, which is really not recent, is historic, between the art field and the art market in general and military industry. But we wanted to invite cultural workers, researchers, and artists to speak from their practices and the collectives that they are part of on what they are doing. This is by no means a whole mapping of the work that is done in the Netherlands, because a lot is actually happening. As Alina mentioned, the works around us are also just a little bit. But I'm very grateful and honored that you joined us to speak from your experiences. Maybe because how Alina finished about talking about Art Rotterdam and prospects, I can start with you, Sarjon. You are going to be in prospects, but the one that is in 2 weeks. I hope it's not too stressful. It is, bless. But I would like you to introduce the group Collective Refusal, which started last year. If you tell us a little bit what the group is, how it started. They wrote this letter called No Neutral Space. Tell us how did it spread? Where are you now in this group?
Yeah, I just recently joined actually, so I'm also quite researching still and looking with them, talking to them about what happened last year, because last year was the first year where prospects happened at Ahoy. And yeah, basically the collective formed out of all the groups, a group of artists that just didn't like that. They had this moral dilemma and didn't know how to address it. They came together, had different conversations, and it was also quite too late for people to opt out. And like mentioned, of course, prospects is this opportunity where you as an artist don't really get much of it. I mean, autonomous artists rely on a funding body. It's the biggest funding body in the Netherlands to exist as artists and to develop their practices. So naturally, there's this tendency to say, I boycott this, I want to walk out. But in this case, it was way more difficult. And also, we don't really hate Mondrian funds. I mean, we like them. It's just that... it's just that there are some things that cannot be this naive, and yeah, and they are not addressed, and they're not critically being communicated also. So of course the artists last year did different things on the spot. For example, in the opening speech, they had hijacked the mic and just spoke what they felt about where they are. And everybody clapped, including the directors, and they kind of it became this silly little moment where people are like, oh, so you agree, but you don't want to do the work, kind of situation, which makes things more confusing. And this is where, our work becomes very what are we fighting for? Who's actually the enemy here? And how can we, address these things? Of course, the letter came as a clear way of communicating what the artist felt and what is needed. There's very clear and very short 3 demands in the letter. It was shared online, and Mondrian Funds eventually requested, which recently happened, a private talk with the collective. And now there's all these conversations about, are they going to gaslight? Are they gonna, all of these things? Should we make the talk public? Should also, of course, who puts the labor in actually? Just asking the simple question: was there no other venue? Is Ahoy the only venue in the Netherlands that you could think of? Is that hard? And this is where cultural workers, instead of developing their practices and focusing on actual serious things, we are cornered in this place where we have to put so much labor in, yeah, doing these kind of researches and like prove to them that it's just actually a very simple thing. Yeah.
I remember it's only like a bit less than a year ago, so yes, I clearly remember that we got an email from the co-initiators of Collective Refusal to the email of Platform BK that they needed support and perhaps even a person in the middle to negotiate with Mondrian. And that was mostly because they were worried that they're going to be, how do you call it, like targeted or pigeonholed is the expression, that they are the ones who are causing trouble, and the artists, whether rightfully or more out of to protect themselves, didn't want to take that risk. Like there is a potential risk, we don't know if it's true or not, that they might be blacklisted by Mondrian if they cause that trouble. So, and later on we did notice that there is this sort of wariness, like, oh, do we come out in public? Do we say, do you see that there is this potential risk? Do you feel you being part of Collective Refusal, or do you feel that atmosphere, whether it's right or like whether that threat exists or not? How are artists feeling within the collective to be public about their collective refusal in regards to their future career and their grants, possible grants with Mondrian?
Yeah, I do have that. I do feel it, not personally, but in the group, and I'm not sure why, because we're not really doing anything. Actually, we're just asking why. And this is the silly part: is that the bar is so low that this is what we are like afraid of. It's yeah, quite frustrating that. Like this bare minimum of asking, like it's just the wrong venue, and we know, we know, and they're so scared of that, of just asking that question, which is really frustrating. I think also artists should take more risks to question what cultural workers be doing, what is our job. We actually can afford playing with our own rules and making our own rules. Especially performance artists, interventionists, graffiti artists, we are supposed to be the ones who know how to intervene, how to say no to things. And now we are cornered in a place where we're also afraid of that. We're like not civil anymore, or whatever. I don't think we should, definitely, especially in this case, because we're literally just writing a letter. Like, it should not be that scary. I personally also talked to the director of Mondrian Funds, and he seemed quite confused all the time. I don't think he's blacklisting anybody. And that's personally like how I feel. I asked him a very simple question. He was like, "Yeah, contracts, whatever." He made it about like really practical stuff. And then I said, "Yeah, it's just embarrassing. Like, we are all embarrassed. I'm not gonna invite my friends to Ahoy, just so you know." And there's this like very simple things that I also think that we're afraid of conflict, we're afraid of shaming each other. Shame is a great tool, everybody. Yeah, shame them publicly, privately. And it's okay, I mean, blacklisted, you can talk about it later. It's a very, chill place, like artists. We do take ourselves too serious, and this is where things freeze and don't move anymore. So, yeah, I think that, yeah.
Thanks. Shame them publicly. Love that. Thanks, Sarjan. I want to go to something also connected to what happened at Art Rotterdam and the protests that happened in March, and then the Nets Fair happened in November. And the effigy that we see and this image is made by the amazing collective group, Balik Bayan. Dewi Sofia is part of the group. Then the group is like, they do cultural, they're invested in cultural work, but also making work for the street, making work for the protests. So they're tools for protest and outside of art institutions. Tell us a little bit about Balik Bayan, and how did you come to make this work, and what happened with it?
Yeah, okay. Hi, like they said, my name is Dewi. I'm part of Balik Bayan. Balik Bayan is, in particular, we are a group for Filipino diaspora, but we aren't only consisted of members of the Filipino diaspora. And we have kind of a broad look, a broad interest in representing the issues of Filipinos both here in the Netherlands, but also back home in the Philippines. And the reason why we became a group is really kind of this observation that some of the founding members had, that a lot of Filipino groups here in the Netherlands were sort of kind of more based on culture. Not that that's a bad thing, but we were sort of missing this kind of point of Filipinos who were politically connected to the homeland. So this kind of idea of a political diaspora, not just diaspora broadly, like broadly speaking, and the only thing kind of bringing us together being that we're Filipino. We understand that there are a lot of things happening to the Filipino people, and one of those things is intensifying militarization. And maybe I can give a little bit of explanation about why we were even involved in the Ned's Arms Fair in the first place. Yeah, show of hands, does everyone know where the Philippines is? Incredible. That's good, because it's a big part of why we're part of this campaign. Militarization touches us because of our geographical location, because of the resources that are available in our land. And I want to go back to the question that was asked earlier about like the chicken or the egg. Why are we talking about preventing these wars? And I kind of agree, these wars are necessary to continue kind of the system that we're all under. It's not something new, and it's always been the case that countries like the Philippines, like Palestine, all of these different places have been militarized for the sake of keeping the imperialist system together. We were used as a launch pad, for example, very recently for a Navy ship leaving the Philippines for Iran. And we are very close to the east coast of China. So we are used sort of as this kind of first line deterrence for this imperialist conflict between China and the US. So with that being said, there's a lot of interest in kind of amping up the presence of both US military, but also local Filipino military in the Philippines. And that leads to kind of a lot of things. For example, impunity for US military officials, but also impunity for Filipino military who are usually repressing peasant movements in the countryside. And with that being said, you know, as kind of migrants, it's our kind of, we care about being able to go back, to be with our people and to serve them. And this increased militarization is also touching a lot of Filipino youth who have that dream of going home. Most recently, the military carried out bombings in kind of the rural areas of the Philippines using attack helicopters that probably were actually purchased at the Ned's Arms Fair. So the Philippine government is a client of the Ned's Arms Fair, and a lot of the companies produce about, I'm not sure anymore, but they produce a large amount of the weaponry, for example, mortar shells, fighter jets, and also electronic warfare systems that impact a lot of the people in the Philippines. So that's a big part of why we're here. It might be a little bit like kind of random, what are the Filipinos doing here? But we have we have a reason. And yeah, I wanted to make that clear, but also, of course, we see that this isn't just isolated to the Philippines. This is also happening to many places in the global south and other countries who are clients of the NED's arms fair, which is paid for by our taxes here as migrants. So it comes very full circle.
Thank you, Dewi. And we wanted to have this pig warhog, but what did you do with it?
What did we do with it?
What happened?
So
What can art do?
we destroyed it. This is, I wish we could show you, and maybe we can show you after, but what happened to this pig, it's a practice that we sort of wanted to imitate from the Philippines and the Filipino movement of making effigies. So these effigies have been usually burnt since the 1960s, but of course, with increased repression in the Philippines, we've actually been resorting to destroying them by hand, which is what happened to this one. And I think it's more than it is visual representation of the military industry. What we want to do when we contribute art pieces or when we contribute kind of these performances is to highlight the possible uses for culture that don't exist within the infrastructure, that actually start with kind of this that is based in the desires of the people. And the effigy practice is one such thing, where you're able to destroy your enemy and you're able to kind of simulate that. And you have this moment when the enemy is destroyed, maybe you know logically that it's going to take a very long time to dismantle these systems. But you have a moment in which you are able to do it, whether that's symbolically or not. You are able to do it. It gives kind of this idea that through this collective struggle, we can overcome these enemies that might seem incredibly big and incredibly difficult to overcome, but we can. And that's kind of the basic principle behind the effigy process. And if we have more time, we can go into the practicalities and how we divide the work, because it's also big into, okay, you know, we're not a group of artists, actually. We have like biology PhDs and childcare professionals in our organization, but we come together and we realize that as organizers, as much as I urge cultural workers to become organizers, I also urge organizers to become cultural workers, because this is what it can do. It can make these images that fight against that monolithic aesthetic of militarization. This is where we start. So, in brief.
Thank you, Dewi. I want to connect what you're saying to your practice, Anika. So you are an artist who, rather than destroying the work, you are investigating the destruction that the military industry does, especially on the environment, on land, the toxicity. Could you tell us a little bit, but then also your work shows in exhibitions and art institutions. So not on the street, but in closed environment that's specific for art. Actually, a video of yours in process we were showing in the expo on the first floor. Could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do? Who do you do it with? And like the collaborations, because some of your collaborations are interdisciplinary, but also where do you show your work? And to add to that, one more question is, how do you navigate this institutional complicity and choosing where to show your work and where not?
Thank you for this very nice introduction and the rather complex questions. I will try to answer as best as I can. I also still want to say that I'm super inspired to be here, seeing all the works by different collectives and artists is really giving me a lot of hope and courage, and seeing these kind of voices of dissent, hearing them definitely does something to me. I'm maybe an artist who comes or who operates in a indeed more institutional side of the spectrum, and I'm trying to maybe make a case for that too, without diminishing the refusal and diminishing the power of activism and saying no. So I come out of photography originally in artistic research. I work with archives, image archives, for many, many years, and that is public archives, but also restricted archives. So for many years, my work was about making hidden knowledge public and bringing things to attention of larger audiences that are not, in my opinion, discussed enough. And recently, in the recent years, I have started to turn my attention to something that I would like to call wild archives, and that is non-traditional archives that can be, for example, soils, minerals, plants, milieus, environments that also hold information, and that I believed through artistic methodologies we can start to read them and also start to communicate better about what type of information they hold. I was in a situation where through the Ukraine war, my sort of a friendship, recently a friendship network and professional network entirely collapsed. And I think that was a big turning point in my practice. That is a moment when I really started to we said it. It is not necessary for every artist to talk about militarization as a single issue and to make that the front and center of your practice. But I was in a situation where I found myself. I saw that as the only way out in the moment. So that's where I am now. I'm really trying to investigate the relationship between industrial militarization and environmental crisis, the types of contamination and really destruction of our living environment that is caused through military activity. I believe that at the moment, I think it's a very crucial event to organize at the moment. I think it comes even a little bit ahead of its time. Like we announcing now a lot of legal changes. We just observed like in my opinion, also way too quiet restructuring of the funding economy towards a war economy, and actually we're not feeling, as artists and cultural workers, we're not feeling the impact of that yet. That is yet to come. We think we feel it, but there will be, I think, a situation where we find ourselves confronted with exactly these questions, which we're now already preempting a bit, like that we can discuss like before this wave washes over us. So it's good not to be entirely unprepared. The situation that my practice is in is that I work with in transdisciplinary working relationships with other artists, but also with scientists and researchers. And what I do is I try to get issues that have to do with military activity and military violence to really broad audiences, and also to work in a way as a kind of translator of scientific findings, because a lot of scientific disciplines are so isolated from other surroundings, isolated from society, that it's really, really hard to discuss. Knowledge is there, but it doesn't reach larger audiences. And this is where institutions come in, because the urge to discuss things with also outside of our circles, where we have a lot of agreement and a lot of community and actually also a lot of knowledge. Once we move out of these kind of circles, we see actually a rather devastating lack of knowledge and lack of discursive ability. And I think that art can sort of bridge this gap, and artworks can become really important discursive tools. Maybe just to give a small case study to talk in less abstract terms. The image that you see here is from a work that Alina and I have been shown actually at the Stedelijk Museum last year. And we've been investigating the contamination around the soils of a weapons factory in Zandam that existed there for 100 years. It was built especially to suppress to supply weapons to the Royal Dutch forces that were suppressing the independence struggles in Indonesia. But also after this colonial conflict, hot conflict had subsided, of course the factory was not closed, but it continued its operations and continued to export weapons on a global level. At the moment I'm researching exercise grounds of the Dutch Defensie that are of course spread all over the Netherlands. In the last year we saw a very vast expansion of these exercise grounds, and through the work of a film, which is a collaboration with another filmmaker, Katja Verhul, but also with soil scientists from the University of Wageningen. We're trying to investigate what does this military activity in these exercise grounds, what kind of traces does this leave and what does it do to the land, because there's a kind of a greenwashing narrative that's being pushed since many years already by actually every army, but specifically the Dutch Defense is claiming that their exercise grounds are actually good for biodiversity, and that wildlife and soldiers and driving tanks always goes together in perfect harmony. There's a big story. If you read into that, you will find a lot of these kind of fairy tales, and it's possible to uphold this narrative because actually since the 1980s there has not been any independent research on the environmental impact of the military activities in these areas. And of course, if you think about what kind of a densely populated country the Netherlands is, and then you think about chemical contamination, for example, with all kind of heavy metals, lead, zinc, everything you can think of, copper, but also PFAS contamination. This is of course all things that go into the ground, that make ground hostile to biological life, and that also go into the groundwater and at some point threaten communities. So it's very difficult to get data on that because they don't really let anyone in. So through our film we're trying to, on the one hand, tell a story about that, but next to this story there's also actual scientific research being done through a soil scientist who also plays a role in the film. So there's a lot of transdisciplinarity. Yeah. I don't want to talk too long. You want to make the bridge maybe to the institutions, right? Shall I still address that, or?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, how, because also you mentioned, like, that you showed this work in Stedelijk, like, maybe just briefly, due to lack of time.
Yeah, I tried to keep it very short. I mean, I have worked with institutions. A few years ago, we were with Enki Guru Khalid and Joachim Robrecht, two theater makers. We were also, we did a theater tour that was going through the whole Netherlands and Belgium, and also as a last station had the Bali, which is a place that I think today I would have doubts if I want to work there. And at the same time also last year I showed at the Stedelijk. So that's institutions that I find super problematic, and that I feel, yeah, boycotting them is definitely one right decision. And at the same time, I find myself in this dilemma that I want to bring my work to the attention of really, really broad audiences. And there is the question of institutional power. Yeah, there's a lot of people who would not come to an event like this that we're organizing here today, but that go to large institutions and that you can reach through such channels. So. What I try increasingly now is, and I have absolutely also refused to participate in exhibitions, and I have refused to collaborate with institutions. I think I draw the line at really when I think that something a narrative is going explicitly wrong, like where I think I cannot. The Stedelijk does dog whistling and does silence. They're not outspoken fascists. So I think that's where I would draw the line. But I think it's still something where yeah, maybe I would change this attitude also in the future. I cannot say it is a completely steadfast attitude. But I find myself absolutely in the dilemma that we want to speak to audiences, we want to reach big groups of people, and we especially want to get out of our own echo chamber where it's very cozy and we have a lot of shared values. But then how do we expand our movement? How do we make noise, and how do we raise a cause for what we think is really, really urgent and should actually be discussed by more people than us? So that's for me maybe also a question.
Yeah, and indeed it was also part of the reason why you're invited differently, like how each one has different strategies with the different tools that you have. And you said it's not steadfast position, so we're doing this now and then we recalibrate based on response. And so yeah, I appreciate as well how you share also your doubts and dilemmas about this position, and see ourselves how to grow and try be agile to try different strategies the whole time. I'd like to go to you, Shruti, for the strategy you went with. So you're an associate professor. I think a lot of people know you because you're also very much on the streets as well, directly in protests. You're an associate professor at the UvA in theater and performance, and you are one of the co-initiators for the campaign Cultural Boycott Israel, and the pledge that people and art workers, cultural workers and institutions were one by one followed into signing and adopting. And we saw in the slides of Alina, 3 of them that have signed are still receiving money from Drom and Dad and being in a web entangled in complicity. If you could please tell us, for the group and the people who don't know about Cultural Boycott Israel, and how your process was to reach the signatories, which is about now 2,200 institutions in the Netherlands?
No, 2,265 artists.
Artists?
And 770 institutions in the Netherlands and in Belgium. So this is an initiative which was started by a small group of people, including Nan van Houten, who's here in the room, and Marijn Lems, theater cultural critic, and myself. We happen to know each other through the theater world, let's say, more broadly. And we thought sometime in the course of last summer and around September or so, maybe, that the time is really ripe. We feel the frustration. We feel a lot of voices from the community, let's say the artist community. Many people have reached a point where they feel something should be done. At the same time, we see a frustration that institutions are not doing much or responding in any meaningful way. So we felt, well, we can do a kind of bottom-up pledge. Institutions may not officially announce any kind of refusal, but we can say, I refuse to cooperate. And if artists refuse, then maybe also from that way, institutions can also be pushed to refuse. So we came up with a pledge, and the pledge, it was not really super radical in any way. It was a pledge which would allow us to reach a broad coalition, to reach a broad number of people, minimum standards, as you were saying earlier, like really lower the bar to a way that you can't say no to this, right? So we tried to reach that kind of a formulation. We followed the guidelines of the BDS movement, but because BDS has such a controversial thing to many still, we didn't publicly say this is following the BDS or in any way. We consulted, though, with people from the BDS to know about the legalities of the pledge, and we put together an FAQ around this, around questions that people have. And what we also did was to share the pledge with key people. We wanted to get a few big names on board so that if these big names sign, they would act as a kind of snowball effect and then encourage others to join. We also got put together a huge long list, a kind of Excel sheet with many, many names and many, many institutions, and got others to add further names to the list as well. And we basically split the list between all of us and sent a whole shitload of emails and messages and phone calls. And it worked. It worked at that moment of time. I couldn't say it was it was anyway so late, It was September 2025. I mean, if we had done the same in October 23, forget it. But it was at a moment when things were obvious beyond words. So to some extent, we were riding the wave of a certain level of acceptability, of recognition of that this is genocide. But nevertheless, I think what it did do was, so when we launched it, I mean, we had a great team of people, including some cultural organizations who agreed to allow some members in their social media team to dedicate a few hours to work on this. So it was really also through grassroots support where certain organizations, perhaps shouldn't name names because some of them received public subsidies as well to do this, but they said, don't worry, we will give people to work social media, to help you with the social media, to help with the publicity and mobilization, a few hours a week to work on this. So in the initial phase, we had some help for this, and it turned out that some of the big names helped to kind of achieve a kind of snowball effect. We have a good size of middle-level independent institutions who have joined, independent artists, institutions which are like not very big, but they're like a bit on the experimental edge. We have many, many more in the theater and performance field than we do in the visual arts. That's got to do with our networks and the contacts we have. But even among the visual arts, we notice that the smaller institutions, independent galleries, etc., are ready to come on board, but the very big ones are not. So their WhatsApp group is possibly, discussing and agreeing with him among themselves. The directors' WhatsApp group of these big institutions are probably saying, "No, are you doing it? No, I'm not doing it." So there's this kind of closing of ranks, I guess, which has brought a kind of ceiling onto how many are joining and how many are not, who is joining and who is not joining. We did also reach out to several people who we know in institutions which we would expect would be on board, but who aren't, and we tried to call them out and have conversations with them. Not call them out, what is it called? Call them in. Yeah, so this is, let's say, the partner of shaming. It's not publicly like writing social media posts, but to say, hey, can I have a talk with you? And then when you meet, you say, your work on decolonization and diversity is so important, but why are you not wanting to do this? So this kind of an approach also helps to force people to be accountable, force people to also say what they are not able to say in public, because in public you will hear words like dialogue, and we're doing a lot, and we are also having an exhibition with Palestinian artists, and we are also, we really want, we can't, we also want to support critical Israelis, all those kind of things. But on the behind, you hear oh no, they are afraid that their funding will be taken away. There is this 1 or 2 persons in the executive board who is opposing it, the rest want. So then you can try to think along and perhaps to some extent see where is the loophole which you might be able to influence, which has helped to some extent, but we've also reached a kind of plateau. So in the beginning phases of the campaign, it was like, whoa, okay, this is happening. So many people are signing up, and we didn't expect it would go like that. But we also reached a certain point where it's stayed. There's just a few trickling in now and then. And so what does that mean? This also raises the question of what's the role of a boycott and a pledge to boycott. And the question you raised earlier, for me, it's like a tool. And it's a tool which needs to be used very strategically and collectively. So it's not helpful if just you and I are boycotting Stedelijk. Yeah, who cares? But if it would be that nobody shows up at this arts fair in Rotterdam, and tickets are massively returned, or the collective aspect of it is, Alina raised it as well, and Wendela did too. The collective aspect is so important. So I feel like no matter what, the achievement is more of showing that artists are not alone somehow. And I find it interesting that we are using the word cultural workers much more, like now, which I didn't hear a few years ago. It also indicates that you're seeing the labor aspect of it, and therefore coming together and collectivizing your work is important. And it shatters this trauma, what is it called, this taboo, or a certain kind of self-image, which is there in the Netherlands very strongly about the artist as this kind of bourgeois, autonomous, outside of any functional and purposeful thing, but is somehow, doing something special, which has not got any political aim. And it shatters that, and that's important.
I think. I think it also, thank you so much, Shirti. I think it also pops up what Dewi was saying about how organizers are cultural workers, but for cultural workers to dare to also be organizers and to link each other. We cannot expect any of these 4 people who are part of other networks, so these 4 collectives, these 4 networks, to only do the work alone. We need to carry it, all of us, together. As expected, because we were running out of time, we're not going to do the idea that we had in mind of having smaller groups that talk in a focused way, in an intimate way with one of our guests. But you know their faces and you know their names, and please hang around in the restaurant or downstairs, outside, and ask your pertinent question that how, on a personal level, where can you chip in? What do you want to do with your work? And maybe a question or a dilemma that you're also facing that you want to think about together. Do you want to ask a question? Because, okay, we still have some time. Okay, because I wanted to say something, but go ahead. Yeah, no, I forgot.
I just wanted to say that it's also very important to maybe consider organizing for Art Rotterdam or rather against Art Rotterdam. So, I mean, you know where to go, but I can also help with that because it's a bit of a more urgent thing that's happening. But at the same time, so is the cultural boycott, so is the arms fair eventually, and so is looking at our own practices. But yeah, we can also be practical. So there's a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge in this room. If they could also consider thinking how to help the people protesting the fair, that would be fantastic.
Exactly.
Can I add something?
And if we can leave also just 1 or 2 pertinent questions among the audience, please prepare it, and we'll take a couple.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight the carpet. Once you enter, there's a Niet mijn aanslag.nl carpet with a QR code. And I want to highlight it in relation to the conversation about taxes that came up. And this is a campaign that started quite recently, actually, and is trying to kind of research what does it mean to strike our taxes, whether directly or indirectly. Because of course the belastingdienst is something super scary for a lot of people. So if you have any information, ideas, or want to follow up, please find the group either through the QR code or on Instagram. And also one of the main things that the group found is that there is a legal way to strike your taxes under Dutch law, that for humanitarian reasons you are legally allowed to strike indirectly or directly. I know that also this room is full of cultural workers and artists and like basically, how do you call them?
But also lawyers. There's lawyers.
Lawyers.
There's researchers. There's journalists.
People that that are not on contracts with companies, let's say, or pay the no, but that's the one. What is freelancers? Yes, adults. If you have bookkeepers, ask them about these laws, ask them about what does it mean to strike, and ask them about, of course, like that humanitarian strike in relation to how do I say no, how do I refuse my money going to all what we discussed. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarjan. I'll take one question. The first person to raise their hand. No pressure. Nobody. It was that scary that we're out of time. You want to leave? Okay, thank you.
It's not a question. We have also a movement. I am Luca from No Weapon World. We also work, try to get some attention from artists to actually focus on the idea that if a company produces weapons and these weapons cannot be sold, what's going to happen to this thing? And not many people think about this. We ask these two artists to create works for us, for our mission. Look at it on the internet if you can. We're going to Brussels now with around 100 artists that produce posters, and we do public affiches now in Brussels. Maybe we can also network and create something together for this. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Luca. So, you know, it's quite daunting because there is this clock upstairs, so we have to finish at 10. We are really thrilled. We are really encouraged. This has been really helpful to focus on organizing this event and to not organize it alone, to organize it with people we could lean on, with Alina, all the work that you did, Jacobin, Jauke, all the work that you did. It's very important that I also thank you, Katja, for doing the note-taking, the sketching, which I need to mention. The report of this event is going, like as these sketches, the live drawings of Katja will be produced as a zine that hopefully will be distributed both physically and digitally for us to spread also the conversations that we've been having with more people. This event has been recorded. If anybody, any intervention, question, or something that you don't want to be in the recording before it gets published online, then please, you know who to reach to tell that too. But last but not least, we are really, I know a lot of people in this room, some people I do not know. This is quite a very important hive mind that we are part of now. Keep connected, know who to reach, and let's carry this fabric together. This is the first event. This is the first event out of Up in Arms, following the article that Alina wrote. But Platform BK wants to continue making these events. They can be in smaller working groups. I see nods where people think, I want to be in a working group to tackle particular research, to follow up on collective refusal, or to work alongside the cultural boycott. I know how to move this forward. That was an initiative with 3 people. It doesn't need more. 3 people with so many signatories. So if you're interested, if you feel called for it, reach out these people, reach out to Platform BK, organize, unionize, join an association. We art workers, cultural workers, we need to join an association. We have the cards of Platform BK. It has a QR code on the back. This is the work that we do, and we stand together so that we don't fall individually. I want to say one last thing. In the outside, there are posters that were donated by Kiosk in Rotterdam. In order to donate it, by purchasing it, you will be contributing to a fundraiser to support the work of Collective Refusal. You mentioned the fundraiser for Workers for Palestine tomorrow at the new Anita. That is also on a flyer. And if I had forgotten anything before I say my last thanks, please remind me. Exactly. So the last thanks is going to go to Pakhuis de Zwijger, is going to go to Sartiana and the technical team, who were very patient and took on a big load of the work. So thank you so much. It has been great collaboration. Thank you.